Our guest today is Professor Gideon Gwa. He's an associate professor of biomathematical modeling and the director of the University of Boyer's Postgraduate School. Professor Gideon is also the coordinator at the University of Boyer of a research project which seeks to use mathematical modeling to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. Professor, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bamula, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
All right. In the later part of the program, we're going to talk about Rebecca Enonchong and her arrest, her detention. But first, coronavirus. There is a new variant in Cameroon, the Indian variant. Can we know more about this, Professor?
The new variant of the virus has been identified to be in Cameroon. There are many variants which are being named to avoid calling it by country name because of stigmatization. They started with the alpha, beta,
the delta.
And so the Indian variant is what we call normally known as the delta variant. I think we are now at lambda, which is in Ecuador. The delta variant, which is has been identified in Cameroon, is very virulent and it's very dangerous in terms of its manifestations. But the good thing is that everybody who had been vaccinated do not suffer the same consequences as those who were not vaccinated.
And unfortunately, very few, we can say it like that, not many Cameroonians have been vaccinated to date. Many are still skeptical about the whole vaccination thing and so on.
It was very unfortunate for us as a country to be flooded with the social media, what we call conspiracy theories about what vaccines do to you, starting with the initial spread of false information that the vaccine was coming out of 5G and internet, and then eventually it's magnetic and all those kind of false information. It was really unfortunate for our society, which has caught on with the information technology at a fast rate to be inundated with this false information. Where we come in as mathematicians.
And that has gone a long way to push many people away from
to fear the vaccine, and recently people think that the vaccine has magnetic strips in it, and it has a chip, it's the peace sign of the beast, and all those things, and that makes people fear taking the vaccine. And it is really unfortunate because the vaccine really does help. It reduces severe hospitalization, that is symptoms, and it reduces death. But it does not offer absolute refractoriness to the infection. In other words, it doesn't prevent transmission. The vaccine doesn't. But the vaccine does prevent
this is severe manifestation.
Severe clinical symptoms
of the virus.
And so it is possible for you, those of us who live in this zone here, you know that there is malaria, and many of us carry malaria at a certain level, but we function normally because our bodies have reached an equilibrium. So what the vaccine does for coronavirus is to prep the body to support in case you come in contact with this virus.
Right,
so it is not. If somebody says that the vaccine is a cure, it's not a cure. It is not. It doesn't stop you from being infected. Yes.
But it goes a long way, in other terms, or in other words, to reinforce the antibodies or the human system
to fight the virus.
To fight the virus.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, and you are now struggling to helping efforts to reduce the spread of the virus through mathematical modeling. What's it all about?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. I want to thank you very much for giving an opportunity to talk about this. First, to let our population and our people know that we can use mathematics to solve many of our problems. And secondly, to show you in very simple terms how we can use math to predict and forecast things like spread of disease, spread of information, misinformation, and things. And so the idea is this. we have in a population of a certain size of persons a disease that is spreading. We want to find out how long will it take for everybody in that population to contract this disease. And if the disease is universally fatal, or if people are dying of the infection, you want to find out how many people will die at the end of the disease. And every disease has its properties, the characteristics of the way it spreads. How does it how does it jump from one person to the other? In the case of coronavirus, which is transmitted by droplets from the air, it is airborne, which means that if we occupy the same physical space and I am infected, then the chances of you being infected are also high. And so we use mathematics to find out what are the proportion of infections that actually lead to death, which are the ones that lead to mild symptoms, and so on, and how do we reduce these infections. And the process is simple in the sense that you have, I'm trying to avoid not to use mathematical symbols, but
yeah, exactly, because
yes.
The whole thing is interesting because we know that mathematics is about figures,
right?
Figures,
right?
And then we're looking at a virus. We want to see clearly the link between figures and the virus,
right?
The calculations that are being done with regards to the virus spreading from one person to the other, as you were explaining. How do you bring this together,
right?
How do you reconcile this and do all the calculations?
We as I said, every pathogen has its spreading characteristics. Those that jump from one person to the other by physical contact, and those that jump from one person to the other via an intermediate medium, like malaria has to move from me to you via a mosquito. Coronavirus move from one person to the other via droplets in the air, and therefore we understand these processes as contact rates, how the rates they contact with each other, the mixing patterns of the population. When the members get together in a common place, how many people, which kind of persons meet with which kind of persons. School children meet with teachers, doctors meet with patients, market women meet with the general population, and so we have these mixing patterns. And now we can ask the question like this: if I introduce one infected person in a community, how many persons would that infected person eventually infect? If I know that each person infects more than one person, we call that number the reproductive number of the disease. And if this reproductive number is bigger than 1, the number of persons that each infected person can infect is bigger than 1, then disease will spread in the community. If the number of infected persons that each infected person can infect during its entire period of life is less than 1, the disease will not spread in the community. So what are the measures that are put in place in order to ensure that the number of persons that each infected person will infect will be less than 1?
Yeah, you've probably done some research,
yes,
with regards to the situation of Cameroon as far as the coronavirus spreading within the communities is concerned. What are your findings as far as the figures? There was a time that some medics were indicating that one person tested positive for coronavirus has the potential of infecting at least 10 other people.
The reproduction number for corona has been estimated in highly densely populated populations to be between 2 and 5. That's bigger than 1. That's why the disease is spreading. 10 is a very large number. Think about it. If one person infects 10, each of those 10 persons will infect 10 each. There's exponential growth. So if one person, in Cameroon, I think the reproduction number in Cameroon has been estimated to between 1 and 2.5, but it is not confirmed yet because we are still looking at the data to be able to actually tell what it really should be, this reproduction number for COVID. But COVID is a very, very contagious disease, and if it is present in the community and the people are interacting freely, then it shall infect more than one person because of its living droplets in the air.
Right. Now, about the the new variant which is there added to the one that was already there. What can we say about the speed at which it is spreading as of now with regards to the figures of one person being potentially capable of infecting 2, 3, 4, and up to 10 people?
Wow. We cannot give a definite answer at the moment as to that speed. But what we can say is that based on the data that we have seen so far from the emerging disease lab of University of Buea that we have access to so far, we can say that there is a positivity rate which is significant in the community. And it is not something that we can actually give it a figure and saying that, look, this is the number here, because we have to look at the larger data set to be able to make that prediction.
Right. Now, the mathematical modeling, practically, concretely, how is it going to help to reduce the spread of the virus?
Thank you very much. Now, if one of the components of our project is to use artificial intelligence and to analyze data, this COVID data, through a dashboard. A dashboard is a repository of the data, the information about the infection cases. And the good thing about the data that we have, that the forms that are being used in Cameroon, is that it identifies where the person was coming from to come and do the test and where the person lives. For example, if you came from Douala and you came to Buea and you felt sick and you don't feel unwell, you indicate in that form that I just came from Douala. Now, when I put all this data in this dashboard, then we can tell, if we look at the proportion of persons coming from location A that test positive, if they are higher than anywhere else, they will call that location a hotspot. That way, you can identify such hotspots, and you can draw government's attention to such hotspots. If we know that many people coming from Limbe test positive, it's an indication that Limbe is a hotspot. If we know that, and so we have been able to our objective is to map these kind of hotspots in the country to see where is the melting pot, where is the virus circulating fastest. People who live in town A and work in town B, you have to have information about mobility data. People who meet only with healthcare givers who leave their home and go only to the hospital, they have a higher chance of being in contact with only the persons who come to the hospital. And those persons there, they will have to look at those data, use artificial intelligence to match all of them to see which ones, where the correlation lies. And so we write these mathematical models. They're sometimes very complicated equations, but with the help of computers and artificial intelligence, we can make a lot of sense about it to identify the hotspots, to actually say which grade, which age group of persons are testing more positive, which profession of persons, what kind of persons are always sick. If it is mostly teachers, then we can think that transmission is taking place in the school more than in the marketplace, and so on. That is where our work comes in.
All right, back with Professor Gideon Gwa, and we're talking about mathematical modeling being used as a tool to reduce the coronavirus or to help government in the fight against this pandemic. And as we speak, barrier measures have practically disappeared on the street, disappeared even in the hospitals, even in other institutions, in the homes. Things have practically returned to normal at the time you're bringing in this project. Now, how far can this project go without these barrier measures?
That is, thank you very much, Mr. Babila. That is really the crux of our project, the barrier measures. We call them non-pharmaceutical interventions. The non-pharmaceutical interventions include washing your hands, staying away, social distancing, wearing a mask, and having the right kind of protection if you're in a certain kind of environment. The question that we ask is, what is the effect of NPIs on a large population, and how do we quantify what that effect is going to be? Now, first of all, to be able to collect data for this, there should be some sort of a response to this. When the government launched its anti-COVID barrier measures, only one, well, listen to other stations, only the recording of the head of state where he's explaining people to wash their hands regularly. That's the only recording that is being played. We don't see a lot of information being told to persons as to whether they should actually obey with these barrier measures.
On the Kinox television, we have the message of the World Health Organization that is being broadcast again and again and again, almost every day at all hours of the day and so on, to be able to remind people of these barrier measures.
What we aim to do is to ask the following question: if everybody adhered to these barrier measures, what is the effect on the disease spread? I'll give you a simple example. We are sitting in a room, 10 of us. Okay, if we want to select one person in that room at random, you have a 10% chance of selecting anybody. If one of those persons is infected, then it is, and then you come in randomly into that room and you want to talk to any of those persons, you have a 10% chance of talking to the person who has the infection and with whom it can infect you. What is the chance that you who came in was masked? Even though there's a 10% chance that you will get infected, that chance for you who is protected, your chance of being infected becomes less small. Now, the person who is sitting in that room and has the virus, if he or she is also masked, the chances of the one sending out the infection to the rest of the population also reduces. So even though there's a 10% chance that somebody might get infected in a room with 10 persons, if the people protect themselves, that chance reduces to a very, very small number. And so the barrier measures are, they sound like social information, but they actually you can quantify their effect in the community by asking yourself, if people adhere to this barrier measure, what is the adherence rate? And the rate of adherence of such of the persons can be translated into a policy, which can now help in designing a response.
All right, the project on mathematical modeling to reduce the spread of the coronavirus will be launched, I think, Tuesday.
Yes, Tuesday the 17th.
Yes, so what are you going to be doing exactly?
On Tuesday the 17th of August, we will be expecting to have on the University of Buea campus the Canadian High Commissioner to Cameroon, who is coming as the official from Canada here, and that is because our project is funded by the IDRC, the Canadian Institute for Research and Development, and also by the Swiss International Development Agency, SIDA. And the IDRC funded program, I mean, it's part of, it's funding a consortium that is in 10 different countries in Africa, including Rwanda, South Africa, and Cameroon and Nigeria. And each of these units, centers, are supposed to be building this dashboard that we are talking about. And once that dashboard is deployed, it would give some sort of global coverage for Africa in terms of the hotspots that exist for this corona. So on Tuesday, we have the Canadian High Commissioner will be coming. We have invited the Ministries of Health, Higher Education and Scientific Research, who are like the supervisory ministry on these issues of staff in the university working on COVID, and we expect them to be there too. And we have our international partners will be talking about their experiences about corona, and the partner from South Africa is going to demonstrate to us how artificial intelligence has been deployed to inform a policy in South Africa. And it was even previewed that the Premier of South Africa might be participating via Zoom.
So we noted that South Africa has been one of the most affected countries in Africa, and the fight against the virus has been more or less quite effective.
Oh yes, and they have used artificial intelligence and mathematicians for policy making very effectively. And they have recognized that if we actually learn how to quantify these things, they can come to decisions faster. And that is why they are very interested in the project, and they are thinking of joining us in this our launch.
Right. So when I asked the question, what are you going to be doing, I was looking at not the launching, but the practical work that you'll be doing on the ground at the level of Cameroon.
At the level of Cameroon, what we hope to do is to let the different persons, actors involved in this disease to know that a multi-pronged approach is always more beneficial than just one side, because we have the frontline worker, which are health workers, the ones who are being exposed every day. We have the laboratory technicians who do the testing, and they have to actually get in contact with persons to collect specimens. We have the epidemiologists who do the forecasting, but we also have the mathematicians.
The mathematicians are now coming in.
Yes, now the mathematicians are coming in to be able to provide some sort of predictive and forecasting mechanism, which all those data put together can help in prediction and forecasting. And so we will be telling the stakeholders that, look, we're here and we need the data that is being collected so that we can furnish it into the dashboard, and we have a lot of experts, and we are involving students, which is the good thing about it. We're involving undergraduate students in the project, and even postgraduate students, PhD students, so that they get to understand that working together is better than being on one side.
Professor Gideon Gwan, what should Cameroonians, what should government expect from this project as a fallout, as a contribution that can be palpable, that can be seen, that can be felt by the people?
Once the dashboard is deployed, it will be able to tell government in real time, just by inspection, look at the dashboard, how many cases are in which part of the country and what are the characteristics of such cases. We were able to see that in a very, very small study that we did, that more men went for testing than women. And even though more men went for testing than women, more women tested positive in that small sample than the men. The percentage of the positivity rate in the women class was greater, and that's puzzling, and we would like to be able to investigate this further. We'll be able to let the state have a hands-on tool from which they can decide which are the age groups, the different classes of people in the society which should have more effort, and then just knowing that the effort, the barrier measures, or the non-pharmaceutical interventions are working is something that government would like to be able to put a finger on. The second thing is the vaccine hesitancy rate. We need to be able to predict how many persons the government can aim for in order to get this much cherished herd immunity. The herd immunity threshold is the number of persons in the community that are not broadcasted, that will not be infective and therefore shield the rest of the population. In other words, you don't need to protect the entire population to get it to be safe. There's a certain number of persons, certain immunity threshold, which once the number of persons is reached through vaccination or through other means, then the rest of the population is protected. We will always have those persons who don't want to be vaccinated. If those persons form a certain minority, it may not be a problem after all if the rest of the population is protected. So the issue of the dashboard, the issue of the information disposal pathway which we are proposing on this dashboard through SMSs and all that, and then the mathematical models that we will build during the process of this project will really come a long way to help.
How long do you intend to carry on this project? As long as the coronavirus is there?
We hope the coronavirus will not be there forever, well, so long, but the funding for this project is 24 months for now, and we have gone in more than 8 months down the line already, and the dashboard has been deployed in many parts of Africa already, and we are hoping that the Cameroon dashboard will be up soon.
All right, the Cameroon dashboard is not yet.
It's on, but it's not yet live.
Okay.
Because it needs to be populated. We need to be populated. We need to have the right, correct kind of data, and we are still discussing with the different data collection centers and trying to understand how we should agree on a data sharing act and all that.
Right, Professor Gideon Gua, Associate Professor of Biomedical, Biomathematical Modeling.
Yeah, that's one.
Right, Professor Gideon Gua, Associate Professor of Biomathematical Modeling and Director of University of Buya's Postgraduate School, Coordinator at the University of Buya of a research project which seeks to use mathematical modeling to reduce the spread of coronavirus. Thank you for your time.
I want to thank you very much for having me, and I'm glad to be here. I'm a great follower of Equinox News, and I'm very, very pleased that you created some time to hear about this.